Hello and welcome. I'm Matthew C. Scaro.
I'm Deji Kuforiji.
On my right, Clint Battersby. On my left, Daniel Kuforiji. And this is MMA in the Basement. We are coming off back-to-back weekends with UFC events. UFC Fight Night Rotterdam, Volkov versus Struve, very exciting. And UFC 215, Johnson versus Borg. Didn't happen. Ray Borg was ill. We ended up getting the headlining fight being Nunes versus Shevchenko 2. We've seen this happen quite a bit recently. Next weekend, however, in the Steel City of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Luke Rockhold will be taking on David Branch. Definitely an exciting fight, but I think most of the news coming out this week has got to be that B test from Jon Jones. Daniel, where does this leave Jon Jones' legacy?
I pretty much think it kind of destroys his legacy, to be honest with you. I mean, first it had to do with him doing cocaine and a hit and run, and then, you know, it was buying, you know, dick pills at a gas station.
Yeah.
And then...
Did anyone believe that story, by the way?
No,
I mean,
not at all.
tainted substance. You know, I mean, it's just over and over and all, and people keep giving him excuses. They keep giving him excuses, and he keeps finding a way to kind of screw himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, who knows how long he's been even doing stuff? You know, really, no one can really say.
Yeah.
Since day one, or since the day right before the first Cormier fight. We just don't really know.
Did any of you guys listen to what Chael Sonnen had to say about him, about how you know he had used cocaine, if he was willing to use life-threatening drugs, and he'd definitely be willing to use steroids, right?
Yes. And I think the thing about Jon Jones is I think it's still an open book at this point. I feel like he's still young enough that if he turns around in the next 4 years, which is what they're saying is the potential suspension at this point, it could be the next 4 years. I honestly, with him, I'm just going to say it, with him calling out Brock Lesnar the way that he did, I could totally see Jon Jones doing some WWE type stuff just to stay in people's minds. And look at Brock Lesnar, where Brock Lesnar was almost like this, like has been in the UFC. He goes back to the WWE and does a couple of things, and now all of a sudden they're giving him a fight against, they gave him that fight against Mark Hunt, and they're giving him, he has a guy like Jon Jones after his last title victory calling him out. I feel like it's one of those situations where I could totally see Jon Jones doing the same thing, where he goes, stays in public relevancy, and stays in everybody's mind, and then gets to the point where when he does get past that 4-year suspension point, he does come back, and you know what? He comes back and wins a couple fights, and you know everything's forgotten at that point. You know, so
I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah, he does need to stay in the public eye, but in my mind, Jon Jones is tainted. No pun intended. He
absolutely.
I can't give him a 5th, 6th, 7th chance. You know, if he does goes to the WWE like you suggested, that's cool for some fans, but for me, I'm just going to look at him just like a Marion Jones, a Lance Armstrong, all these other people that got busted for performance-enhancing drugs. He's done. I think that we just need to get him out of the UFC and be done with him.
You know, I hear what you're saying, but you mentioned him fighting Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, I mean, he's been on steroids his whole life. This guy, he got popped for steroids in his last fight. I kind of like the idea of the two of them fighting each other on steroids. I don't, you know, let them do steroids. Or maybe require that they do steroids, and let's watch a freak show match. I know we can't do that for the legitimacy of the UFC, but
I kind of feel like there's two different kinds of ways to look at it in the sense that the thing that hurts is that we've looked at Jon Jones as a potential best fighter ever. And I think the reality of this situation is it maybe takes that away from him. And yeah, we're not going to look at Jon Jones as the best fighter ever. He's not going to be like a Jose Aldo, and he's not going to be in that spectrum of fighter. But it doesn't change how he could come back and become champion again. He comes back and becomes... everybody's talking about him potentially being a heavyweight champion. As he gets older, that's what the thought process was anyways, that he would go up to heavyweight and challenge for that belt. Well, if he goes and he wins a heavyweight title in 5 years from now, like, now he's a 2-time champion in 2 different weight classes, and it's like, you can't...
But the problem with that is that you're going to be away from the sport for so long, and if he does something stupid again outside the sport, people are just going to be they're not going to want to see him ever again. So, I mean, he has to keep his nose clean, but I doubt it.
I don't know if he does. What do you think about DC now? Does this make DC the best 205 fighter ever?
That's going to be
That's hard,
that's going to be very difficult. I mean, the only guy he loses to, in his whole career is Jon Jones. But who knows, there's an asterisk next to Jon Jones. So, pound for pound, I would say yes, he's probably one of the best ever to fight in mixed martial arts, Cormier, without a doubt.
I don't understand why we have to put those labels on guys that are still fighting. Like,
Right.
I feel like those are labels
We put the label on Jon Jones as the GOAT.
We just did, actually.
Yeah,
You did, to be
yeah,
honest with
yeah.
you. And I was thinking to myself that Demetrius Johnson is the GOAT,
Yeah.
but that's my opinion.
Touche. I kind of feel like it's one of those things, though, where Jon Jones' talent level, the guy has been unbelievable. Like, when we watch Mighty Mouse fight, it's one of those situations where he is great, but because he's in the lower weight class, he doesn't get that relevance of the Jon Joneses.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's one of those situations where before Jon Jones, Anderson Silva was the GOAT. And I just feel like at this point in his career, it's probably, even though I just did it, it is too early to be assigning these GOAT labels to people. Like,
It's a popular culture, though. I think that we do it in everything, from sports to music. The great Beyonce's the greatest of all time. Jesus, they haven't even retired yet. Let's look back on their legacy after they're done.
I agree.
All right, so putting things in perspective, guys, not necessarily the greatest of all time as far as fighting as a whole, but what about just the light heavyweight division? Is Daniel Cormier the greatest of all time now in the light heavyweight division? He's definitely the champion again, right? It's been overturned. It's now a no contest.
I mean, excluding Jon Jones, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. I think he is.
So you think Jon Jones would be the greatest of all time as a light heavyweight?
If Jon Jones didn't have any troubles, didn't have any problems, yes, Jon Jones for sure, without a doubt, would be the greatest ever at light heavyweight.
Oh, absolutely.
So if we're making a list of light heavyweights, who's on your top 5? I hate to do a top 5 list right now, and then you guys didn't think about it, but top 5, we're looking at Liddell, we're looking at Ortiz, we're looking
Lyoto
at
Machida.
Machida, the Lyoto era. What was it called?
Machida era.
The Machida era.
Yeah.
So I mean, Jon Jones and DC's up there, but Jon Jones disqualified himself, and now I think DC could have beat all those guys in their prime.
But what do you guys think what do you think the UFC should do with Jon Jones though? Do you think they should just release Jon Jones?
I don't think they will, because I don't think that they want to give Japan an easily marketable fighter like Jon Jones, and where that it'll be using
because
steroids.
people that still like him, like ourselves, I like Jon Jones. I think he's a talent, and if an organization overseas puts him on, we will be tempted to buy those fights and watch it. And like you said, UFC doesn't want to give a freebie to those guys.
But do you feel like that's going to be a black eye in the sport though? I mean, UFC doesn't want to be like WWE, where WWE used to always have to worry about people doing the steroids and having that coming in there. They want to be a clean sport. Boxing doesn't have all that. And MMA, no matter what they say, they want to be on a stage of boxing. How people talk about boxing, look at boxing. So they don't want everyone saying, "Well, your guys are all on steroids." So that's the only way you can beat people.
I disagree. I disagree in the sense that, I feel like they do want to be WWE because they just want to sell a pay-per-view. It's at the point now where I feel like it has become less about like the rankings and the statistics, or not statistics, but I feel like it's become less about the rankings and more about who can sell a pay-per-view. Conor has changed things in that way, where I feel like because Conor McGregor is selling so many pay-per-views, before Conor McGregor got this Floyd Mayweather fight, Dana White was saying that's definitely not going to happen. He's under contract with the UFC. Next thing you know, Dana White's wearing Conor shirts to all the weigh-ins, basically trying to sell the pay-per-view. So I feel like it's become less about the actual sport and it's become more about pay-per-view.
Do you think that's because they just sold the UFC for $4.2 billion or around that? So do you think they're trying to recoup that money back now that Ronda's gone? Especially Jon Jones now is gone. They only have one superstar really left, and they want to put as many big fights as they can to make some of that money back. I mean, that's a lot of money that they had to pay for the UFC, and
I
agree.
believe that Conor McGregor's an outlier, right? Is that right? Is that fair enough to say?
Of course, yeah.
Right. I think that UFC puts on fights nowadays that are just so top heavy and so much crap at the bottom. So you are right. They do need that spectacle in the terms of WWE, but as a fan, I don't want them to go that route where it's just matchmaking, just the matchmaking.
Agreed. I like the sport aspect of it. I want it to be a sport. I want it to be a situation where the champion is going to fight one of the top 5 or top 6 guys in the division. Like, he shouldn't be fighting the number 1 guy in another division. He shouldn't be fighting some guy from Japan who talked a little bit of schmack and now all of a sudden he gets a title shot. Like, I kind of feel like they need to put a leash on that kind of stuff and make it a more of a sport, like a baseball, like a football, like the Super Bowl champ. Like, when you get to the Super Bowl, they don't sit there and say, well, this team's a little bit more popular, so like let's see if we can manipulate the playoffs in a way. Like,
that's exactly right. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't.
Do you think Bellator had it right though?
I love the
tournament setup. Wasn't it dope?
Yes.
And unfortunately, you're gonna burn through a lot of fighters, but I thought the tournament was really cool.
I feel like what was happening was they would put on the tournaments, and then the guys that they wanted to win these tournaments weren't winning the tournaments. So they bring in a guy like Fedor. And they think, okay, Fedor's going to win the tournament, and we're going to sell a bunch of. Well, they weren't selling anything at the time because they were on regular TV, but they thought that that was gonna help build Bellator up, and then Fedor loses. Was it the first round? He loses in the first.
I think that was Strikeforce. Strikeforce had that tournament.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I apologize. That's correct.
But you're absolutely right. They put guys up in Bellator tournaments that they figured that you're going to get past the first and second round, but that helped us find new people that we never even knew about, you know? And that's why I like the Bellator tournaments.
Well, they're kind of doing a similar thing in the Ultimate Fighter, right? So we're looking at this new season, the Ultimate Fighter 26, and this is going to be for the strap, if I'm correct. It's featherweight women's title, is that right?
I think it's the strawweight, if I'm not mistaken.
125?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
it's
I'm sorry.
no,
Of course, yeah.
It's 125.
Featherweight's 145, right.
But yeah, I've been watching the first couple episodes, so it's been pretty cool so far.
Yeah, but we were just talking about how they kind of, they match up people so that they feel like they can win. Like, we see that with the bracketing, obviously, in those. We saw Roxanne Modaffari.
I love her.
I do too, big fan, and she absolutely dominated.
It's amazing to see the change in her too.
Yeah.
From if you watched her when she first appeared on The Ultimate Fighter, and you saw what a sloppy fighter she was at the time, to see what her current camp has done to her, as far as I feel like it's reintroduced her to us, where it's like she's a whole new fighter now.
I think the move from her leaving Japan, and going to Syndicate in Las Vegas really helped her, not only with her confidence, but with her stand-up game, because that was the biggest problem.
Yeah.
She always had jiu-jitsu. She was very good at grappling.
Yeah.
It was her stand-up that was just atrocious.
I was going to ask, is she still into the whole Japanese culture? I know that that was a big thing for her in the first Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
Is she still talking about that right now, or is it a little bit less?
It's a little bit less. She talks about it just a little bit, but not much. She more talks about her new team now that she came from and that she trains with. So that's pretty cool.
I do think that Roxanne should be cautious about falling in love with her striking, though. She kind of has that herky-jerky striking. Reminds me of that, who's the Daniel guy from Australia or New Zealand?
Daniel Kelly?
Daniel Kelly. For some reason, her striking always reminds me of Daniel Kelly. And he's been extremely successful. He's been extremely successful with it, but it's also his Achilles heel, if you ask me.
Well, I mean, you have to be careful, because you have Ronda Rousey.
Right, yeah.
Someone who
example.
who fell in love with her stand-up, and then all of a sudden, look what happened.
Knocked out Betch Correia and then thought she can stand up with Holly.
With everybody, and
didn't work out.
Knocked out here, left and right.
Apparently, Henry Cejudo thinks he can strike, and he's right. Was he incredible?
Machida?
That was a really good fight for him. He actually looked way different than he did before, from his other fights. And he's won some really impressive fights, but that was very impressive.
Well, this is his first win in the UFC. He lost against DJ, lost against who's DJ's biggest?
Joseph Benavidez.
He lost against Benavidez. This is his first UFC win.
No, I don't think that's
No,
correct.
he had a
I'm
couple
pretty sure
fights
he won.
before.
He won 2 or 3 fights
You guys
before.
should-
I'm pretty sure.
Because I think that wasn't the Benavidez fight was after DJ, wasn't it?
Yes. And
Yeah.
he lost to DJ.
Yeah, I don't think he walked in.
Wasn't that after
No,
Tough?
he won.
He was on Tough.
He won a few fights.
Did he win a few
Yes,
fights?
he won a
in the
few
UFC?
fights. Then he got his title shot.
Yeah.
He lost to Dimitri by
Knee.
to the knee or to
Yeah, that was a
whatever.
nasty knee.
But yeah, those previous fights were he did well. He just wasn't anything, you know,
I
shocking.
thought
mind-blowing.
he came off of another organization and got brought into the UFC, but
No, he had a couple fights for sure.
okay.
We're gonna pull this up and we're gonna get an answer to you.
Absolutely.
But you know, the one thing we haven't seen him do is wrestle in the UFC.
Which is-
it's kind of amazing. Right?
Yeah, which
He
is
was-
shocking. He's a gold medal. He's a gold medal winner
Gold medalist.
in wrestling, and the guy does not want to wrestle.
Well, think about it. If I'm fighting Henry, I'm not going to try to go to the ground with this man, right? Because you know he's a wrestler.
Yeah.
Even Jits could be stopped by wrestling. So I think that's
Yeah.
why we probably don't see him, because no one wants to get into that arena with them.
But you know, it's kind of funny too with DJ. DJ is just, you know, the Swiss Army knife. You know,
Yeah, that's a good-
It does not matter like what jiu-jitsu, wrestling, striking. It just does not matter. He'll take you out in the style that you're best at. He'll take you out in that.
What do you
he
think
did
his
to Hayes.
most difficult fight? DJ's most difficult fight?
In his career?
Yes.
His most difficult fight was with Dominic
Elliott?
Cruz.
Dominic Cruz, right?
Dominic Cruz beat him
Dominic
up
Cruz
pretty
beat
bad.
Dominic
actually.
Cruz
He
beat
gave
him.
him a
He
welt.
beat him.
Yeah, he
But
won.
that was at
That was
135.
his last loss.
Yeah, that's 135.
Yeah, that's correct.
In
I
his
asked you his
division.
career. Oh, in his division.
Yeah, in his division.
Oh wow. Has he lost in 125?
No.
Just real quick, guys, I just want to say that Henry Cejudo first beat Dustin Kimura, then Chris Carriasso, Chico Camus, and Jussier da Silva before taking on
And
Dimitri.
these are all in the UFC?
Yeah, those
Okay.
4 were in the
Okay.
UFC. Yeah.
All
Yeah, though. Who was his?
Wait, was that his first fights were in the UFC, or did he fight in a
No,
different
he
organization?
fought in. He had some fights
Yeah,
before that.
yeah, he had
Okay.
fights in other
Yeah.
organizations.
Okay. But I thought, is it Tim Elliott?
Tim Elliott. I love Tim Elliott.
Yeah,
he's
he's
good.
very herky-jerky style,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
He kind of reminds me of Dominic Cruz when he was bouncing
Mhm.
around. I think that first round was very telling. That
Mhm.
DJ is that Swiss Army knife, like you said. He kind of figured it out, and it was
Yeah.
all uphill from there for
Mhm.
DJ.
Like I said, it's my opinion, and I know that we don't want to put the GOAT label on people, but I do think that DJ's the GOAT. That's
Yeah,
kind of
and like Clint, you said, it's because of those smaller divisions, and I blame Dana White for some of it too.
Yeah. Do you guys think? I know he's going for his is it an 11th title he's trying to win?
title defense. Or?
Yeah, title defense for DJ.
I know that he had.
I think he already tied
Anderson Silva, right? This was
so
to
he's going
beat
for
it.
the
Yes,
11th.
exactly.
Do you guys think that his first few were against maybe lesser competition, just because the 125 was so new, that
It
he wasn't really
I-
fighting top tier guys? Because I mean, think about it. They had to create a whole list of guys for him
A
through tough,
Right.
just for him to find a guy to fight. That's
But that's with everybody in MMA, man. I mean, it's such a new sport. If you look at all those champions, a lot of them had some weak competition coming up. So I think that's really unfair to say DJ had the weak or really weak competition. I think that everybody did.
I agree with that, and I also I feel like just like with how Tough is now introducing a new belt for the women's weight class, where it's like a situation where you're like giving somebody a belt off of winning a TV show. The last time they did that, which was also the a woman's weight class, the champion who won Tough came out and defend her belt for one time, and she was destroyed in that fight. So it's like I feel like it's like one of those situations where it's like they try to promote it on TV and make it like a big deal through the Ultimate Fighter, but really it's just a way to sell the Ultimate Fighter and make the Ultimate Fighter keep going. So they just like kind of throw these together and like make it even more important, more special by adding a title to it. So now it's like, well, now you're not just getting a contract. Now you're getting a title belt. And
Matt Serra kicked his ass though, coming
Yes,
out
he
of the
did.
Tough House.
But also,
I'm not the one that tapped from. I'm not the one that said uncle.
Does anyone miss Dana White being more involved in the Ultimate Fighter? I used to love seeing him. No, you guys didn't like that?
No, I don't really miss him at all.
I-
Do you know what I actually miss from Ultimate Fighter?
What's that?
I used to love when it was the coaches knowing that they were going to fight at the end of the episode, on the finale,
Agreed.
and it was just it was drama. I'll admit,
Right,
I
yeah.
love the drama of it, but it was just knowing that these two guys were going to get in the ring, or
Yes.
girls, and they were going to get
And the fights in the house were just the icing on the cake
Cake.
for what it's leading to.
Yeah, I mean,
And
there
I
was
think-
so many of them.
And it led to a good free TV fight, you know? Or sometimes it was on pay-per-view, but a lot of times it was like, hey, tough finale, the coaches are going to battle this out. And I thought that was dope. Good point.
I do 100% have to agree with that. I love that you brought that up.
Yeah.
I feel like that added so much intrigue, and you know what? Also added a little layer of drama to the competition, where it was like almost like there were multiple situations in the house that were brought up just because of that, and it's like I agree with that 100%.
Evans versus Rampage was a great tension in the house.
Oh, it was. So
That
it
was
yeah.
awesome. And then when Connor was on it versus Faber,
Faber.
it was not the same kind of thing. It was just, we're going to win, and then they're just going to go their separate ways.
Yeah.
Well, for that one, it was a little bit different because they weren't going to fight each other.
No.
So there was no.
But
real
what
kinda-
was the point of it then?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was just to bring Connor on there for them to have more views for people to watch tough. That was it, you know. And I mean, look at the ones going on right now. I mean, Justin Gaethje versus Alvarez. Honestly, if there wasn't a belt on the line for this one, where's the drama? Where's the?
Are they going to fight each other?
They're supposed to fight each
Oh,
other.
yeah,
next. So I feel like the title is what's really, they're trying to make it look like that's really what's important. But they should just go back to the way it used to be about the two coaches and how they're going to fight. And not have them fight on a pay-per-view. You know, have them fight on the finale like they used to.
Yes.
That's why everybody went to go tune in. They tuned in. They said, yeah, okay, we're going to see two people or one person win an Ultimate Fighter. But really, it was to see those two coaches get it on.
They headlined at that event.
Yes.
But no one misses the Dana White pep talks or Dana White kicking people out of the house.
I think
No one
Dana's
misses
kind
that.
of run his course a little bit. I feel like it's starting to get to the point where Dana says something, and it used to be what Dana White said was gospel. If Dana said this wasn't going to happen, this wasn't going to happen. He said Jon Jones wasn't going to main event a pay-per-view. Jon Jones is main eventing a pay-per-view. In the last pay-per-view that just happened, he had basically talked about Nunes not being able
Yes, he did.
be a main event for a pay-per-view. And Nunes is the main event of the next pay-per-view. So it's like, I think he needs to like dial that back a little bit, because it's like, it's making you look stupid after a certain period of time.
His
where
foot
it's
is
like,
continually getting inserted in his mouth time and time again. I'm sorry. I want to bring this up. I just think that Dana White's time has come. I think he should be kicked out. I think you got to get rid of him. If this was any other company, you can't talk about your products like he has been doing. But that's on a different tangent. But I just think, you know what, when it comes down to Tough, Dana White was the training wheels. Time to take those training wheels off, and Tough can run itself without having Dana White there every episode.
I like Dana White. I think he brings a lot of intrigue to the sport. I love hearing his press conferences. I think he's funny. I know that he puts his foot in his mouth. I agree with you, but the man is entertaining to me.
I think he is entertaining. I also like him on Tough.
Yeah.
But that's like more of a being an entertainer situation, where when he's on Tough, he can be an entertainer.
Yeah.
Where he needs to dial it back is his power over the company, as far as like how he talks about the fighters. We've talked about how he brings down Tyrone Woodley, or how he how he's talking down about Nunes, where it's like, that's like a champion. Like
DJ, what he's done to DJ.
Yeah, like
I'm with you. Yeah, I
he needs
agree.
to dial it back in that aspect, where it's like you're holding back a whole division, you're holding back a whole weight class. Like, it's time to like.
But I think it's when it comes down to it, there's Dana White, there's Joe Rogan. These type of names just go with UFC.
Stables.
They're hand in hand, and You know, they almost need to be there. You know, I even said the same thing with Goldie. You know what I mean? I kind of miss, and it's all over.
Gosh.
Like, you know, I kind of just miss hearing that. You know,
I will say on that note, when I heard Goldberg on Bellator, I was like, it made it feel like Bellator has always been real MMA. My very first fights that I ever went to go see was a Bellator card down in Chicago, like in a Chicago theater, and to hear Goldberg's voice over a Bellator fight card just made it feel more real. It made it feel more legit, and I loved it.
I don't think Dana White. I don't think there will be anyone who ever puts a belt around a fighter's waist other than Dana White in his lifetime. I think he will always be the man in the cage doing that.
Well, yeah, I mean, unless Shelby's in there or somebody.
Has Sean Shelby ever put a belt on someone?
Wasn't he the one that just did Nunes?
No.
Dana White's on vacation, people. He's not there for it.
he's got his show, you know. Dana White looks for a fight.
He just came off of the Conor World Blitz, so no, he's actually on vacation. I think Shelby just put the last.
But you think he's ran his course?
I really do. I mean, I really do think that he is something that's gonna. He's an icon of the sport, right? And I think that he's done a lot for the sport, but as of late in the last couple of years, how he has destroyed, or not just destroyed, I think destroyed is too big of a word, but how he just has taken, kind of chopped away at the credibility of his own fighters is something that I think that even fighters are mentioning it now. People are getting upset. T. Woodley was pissed off. DJ had a war with him. It's just something you don't do. Luke Rockhold, oh my God, forget about it. So, these guys are your champions. It's not like he's talking about the number 10, 11, 12th guy. He's talking about the guy that's holding the darn belt. So he needs to either change it up a little bit or take a step back. If not, if I'm WAMG or whatever the hell the new owner's name is, you got to start taking a look at this and saying, is he really tarnishing our product?
Yeah.
Well, Deji says he's ran his course. Unfortunately, I'm looking at the clock and we have ran ours. But check back next week here to the MMA Fanatics page. This is MMA in the Basement. Click like, share, follow when we want to hear your comments. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace.